Hi, Darby. Take a chair. Karolyn.
Absolutely. No. Rose in the middle.
All of the guys.
Can you believe it? All for you, right here.
Darby Hinton.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Tevis. I'm a writer and a columnist for Classic Images magazine, and I'd be honored today to interview. Can you hear me?
I'm very closer.
Okay. Is this better? Hello? Testing 1, 2, 3. Better? Yeah, no?
All we can do without feedback.
Okay. Is that better? Okay, great. And I want to welcome the two guests that I'll be interviewing today, Karolyn Grimes and Darby Hinton. The section is called The Conversation with Child Stars. And we're all a little bit older now than when we were
What's he
child.
talking
It
about?
wasn't very nice.
What's he talking about?
But anyway, what I was going to do is I was really going to explore that area with you in terms of child stars and everything. And so I'd like to start really with some general questions about that. And one of my first questions is, did you feel that you were born into acting?
Well, I don't exactly know what that means, but I started when I was 4 years old. I didn't know any different. It was my life.
Gotcha.
And so playing with kids were on the set. It wasn't at home in the neighborhood. It was just a different kind of life.
How did you get started? What happened?
Well, I
What was your
had a
first-
stage mom,
Okay.
and she was out
Was you in there? Okay, that's fine.
I had every lesson that you could possibly take in your whole life. Drama, dancing, singing. The dancing didn't take, by the way. But everything else, I mean, if there was there for me to take, elocution, dialect. My mother stuck me in every class. I started the piano when I was 3, the violin when I was 5. So that's what you call a stage mom. And so that's, you know, I knew no different than being in front of crowds and, you know, acting or doing whatever.
Now, Darby started much earlier, if I recall from what I read.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, I had the burning desire to get in the business when I was 6 months old.
Exactly.
And I whined and cried until they did it.
I read there's some information on the internet that says that you were in a Playhouse 90 episode.
Yes,
And I'm doing
that was
some-
my first gig. What it was, it started out stage family. My
Yeah.
father was an actor. My mom was in radio and a school teacher. Actually, once she married my dad. But my 2 older sisters had started doing commercials when they were young. And then so when I was born, they would ask my dad, well, you know, your son, do you think he's going to go? I don't know, the kid's a bum. He's a month old, hasn't earned a dime. And he loved that joke. Oh, he's 2 months old. Oh, he's 3 months old, he hasn't earned anything. And my mom hated that joke. And so just as kind of a joke on him, yeah, she got me on Playhouse 90 and made him, you know, oh wait, you gotta watch this show. There's somebody on it, you know, there's a good friend of ours and we gotta see it. And he watched the whole thing in silence. And then when it was over, he turned to her and goes, Marilyn, you sure know how to ruin a good joke.
Do you happen to know what episode? I'm real curious.
I don't have a clue.
Because on the internet, one thing said Jane Mansfield was there with you, but Jane Mansfield wasn't in a Playhouse 90, basically, though. So I was curious if you could clear that up for me.
Yeah, oh, sure. I remember it well.
Now, as children, did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Is this something that, or was this, you know, mom's telling me to do this, so I have to do it? Or was it something you really enjoyed?
Personally, me, I loved it. And like you say, it's just kind of what you did. That's how you grew up. I grew up on a set, getting to play cowboy and Indian, and anything else. You know, Brothers Grimm, I remember doing, well, the reason I remember Brothers Grimm, it was probably about 3 or 4 or something, but they had an artificial snow machine, and it was those plastic flakes. And they, don't look at the machine. Okay. And they had to keep sending me to the nurse with the tweezers to get the plastic flakes out of my eyes. So as a kid, I kind of remember that one. But yeah, well, and I was very fortunate. I'm on the board for Looking Ahead and Minor Consideration, a couple different organizations that look out for kid actors, and we've done a lot to change a lot of it. But I'm one of the ones that loved it. And I was fortunate because I had Fess Parker grow up as a surrogate dad. And, you know, he, not only Daniel Boone and the script writers, but Fess himself. And Rosie Greer and Jimmy Dean and, you know, just some really great people. And Ed Ames is still a wonderful friend. So, yeah, I love the business.
Did you know that Fess Parker is an interesting connection for the two of you? Your most famous movie, of course, is It's a Wonderful Life with Frank Capra. Do you know Frank Capra also directed Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? Well, Fess Parker was in the TV series of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It only lasted a year or so. Right. But interesting little connection there for you two in terms of Capra stuff.
Yeah.
But getting back, what did you think? What did you think about it? Was it something you enjoyed? Was it something?
Oh, I loved it because it was all fake. You know, it was a world of make-believe and pretend, and a little girl can have a blast doing that. And the snow in all the movies always fascinated me because it doesn't snow in Hollywood, and I'd never seen snow, so it was really fun to play around and all that. So, and even the kids on the set with me in the movies, you know, you hung around, you played, you did your games, and yeah, it was just life. That's the way it was. That's all you knew. You walked out the door, and you never knew what you were going to be doing that day. You never know who you were going to be, or who your mom and dad were going to be, or what was going to go on. That was a lot of fun.
And you were protected. You were behind the studio gates.
That's true.
You know, you had it was a very, you know, I'm comparing it to, I don't know how your transition is when you went out of it, but, you know, like when I left the series and went into public school, that was a whole different world.
I was going to ask that question. Did you go to school on the set? Because I know in your few years, they did have a guardian assigned to you, right? When you were on the set, that would teach you, you know, try to keep up with your education, I think, right?
Yes, a welfare teacher.
With Karolyn?
Everybody had.
Everybody had.
Somebody from the welfare department came, and it was her job, or his, well, it was mostly women back then, I don't know, and it was their job to see that you weren't under the lights too long, or that, you know, your body wasn't at risk. Yeah. And they also had to teach you your lessons. And
they were also giving your
so
lessons.
We usually have a one-room schoolhouse dressing room, and if there were more kids on the set, they'd be in there with you or whatever. But I don't know if I got a really good education that way. Do you think? What do you think?
Well, you know, it's interesting for me because I had to have 3 hours of school a day. That was the rule, and we've now changed it to where it has to be in at least 15-minute chunks. Because there'd be times when, you know, they would light you, you'd run back to the table and you'd sit down, you're in the middle of a math test, and you're in the math test thinking, wait a minute, on my marks, or those lines, was I supposed to? And then right when you focus here, they come grab you and put you back on the set, and then you're on the set hitting your mark going, wait a minute, was that math problem? So we at least tried to make it so there's a little bit more chunks. And another law that I'm kind of proud that we passed is, now they're accredited teachers. Because before, and we still have a little bit of a challenge with the studio system and the teachers because, and bless them, a lot of them are wonderful, but they're hired by the producers. And they're there where it is a rule that the parent is supposed to be within earshot and eyesight of the kid at all times. That never happens.
It really can't.
It can't. It's just the way it moves around. And I don't even want to get off on that soapbox where you don't pay the parent for being there, so that's why the parents sometimes end up taking money from the kids, and then that divides the whole family. But that's a whole other... but the teachers are hired by the producers, so they are really the safeguard for the kids.
Gotcha.
So how willing are they to say you worked them too long, or it was too hot, or this is dangerous? That's their job. they're not going to get hired again. And it's a very small group of teachers too. So we're trying to do something about that where they really can be more of a safeguard for the kids.
You know, he said that we're trying to do this. You mentioned the Mind of Consideration. I don't know if you're aware of that. That's an organization that was started by Paul Peterson that does a lot to try to watch out for child actors and protect them on the set and such. I don't know if you want to say anything more about the organization.
Yeah, well, no, it is. It's Paul. He's the patron saint of child actors. And he's really a fighter. He goes up Sacramento. He's actually, they asked him on the, excuse me, United Nations, because he's not only done it for child performers, but for child labor laws across the country, and the right to work states. So that's a great thing. And also I'm very happy to be on the board for Looking Ahead, which creates a community for the kids. Because a lot of these kids, you know, Paul, I think, one of the ones that coined the phrase, the parents bring them out to Hollywood, and it's the deer in headlights. The parents see the bright lights and that, and they're like, here, take my kid, go ahead. I'll take him out of school for 2 years, we'll live in these apartments, we'll see. Meanwhile, there are people, you know, trying to sell them pictures and all that, and taking advantage. And then they go back to school, and they're 2 years behind, and it's hard. Or now, a lot of them are homeschooled, which is a good thing, but they don't get the social interaction. Which of course with our kids today we're having a challenge with anyway, so, but even though, so what we do is we form communities, because I also don't know about you, but when you were on interviews, a lot of the time that kid wants your job. And, you know, he's out after your stuff. So you didn't interact with the other kids, especially if they were your age or your type.
Well, you were threatened by them.
So we try to do a thing, we either take them paintballing, or we take them to feed the homeless, or make park benches. But it's a community so they can have fun. Because it is hard for kids that aren't in the business to understand what you're going through. Yeah, you might have been just hanging with, you know, Brad Pitt and stuff. For you, that's your job. And there is a lot of teasing and not. So anyway, so I'm very happy with those two organizations that go. But absolutely, Paul is the one that started it all with the Mind of Consideration.
Carolyn just mentioned that you felt threatened. Did you feel threatened by your fellow kids that someone might take your job, or?
I was too dumb, I think. I didn't catch that.
Well, no,
when I went and interviewed for It's a Wonderful Life, you know, back then we didn't do casting calls. It was a different thing, auditions and things. We did one-on-one interviews. And I went to that interview. There were 5 little girls there. We all had the same agent. Her name was Lola Moore back in the day.
I had Lola.
Yeah. Everybody had Lola. And, you know, the studio would call her and they'd say, well, we need a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid for something. And so she'd go through her stable and figure out who to send for that particular interview. And there were 5 little girls in there with me. And one of the mothers accidentally spilled some coffee on my dress. And I didn't think anything about it. My mother was very protective in the way that she was very careful what she said in front of me. I didn't really know that I was with these movie stars and all this sort of thing. I had no idea. They were just my friends. It was just my life. I didn't know they were special. And that's the way my mother made it. Well, I heard her talking to another mother when we left that interview, and she told her that the woman had done it on purpose. And so then that's when I began to realize, you know, I'm 6 years old, and I began to realize, okay, we've got a competition going here, you know. So then I realized that I had to get on my toes a little better and be more aware that, you know, perhaps there's some threats out there. I don't know. But anyway, it didn't bother me a bit. I walked in there and talked to Capra, and he hired everyone hands-on. Even the extras. There were 2,000 extras in It's a Wonderful Life, and he hired each one individually. That's how much of a perfectionist he was. It's very incredible.
It's a good transition into that movie. As a matter of fact, I made a copy of this so you could show the audience.
Oh, yes.
Zuzu, it was named after the Zuzu ginger snaps.
Oh, that's right. By the National Biscuit Company, which I think is Nabisco today. But that's, do you remember when Mr. Stewart runs up the stairs and he's been in these unborn sequence, and he's so happy to see the kids, and he loves on them. And I come out my door and I say, "Daddy," and he says, "Zuzu, my little ginger snap." So I was named after a cookie.
Interestingly,
And I bet you up their sales too.
interestingly enough, she also wrote the "It's a Wonderful Life" cookbook in 1996.
I did.
And on page 158, it says, "Zuzu, my little ginger snap cookies." And the next line after that you say is, "You didn't think for a second I'd leave out ginger snaps, did you?"
No.
But what I was going to say about that movie, I also heard that, I was also going to ask you, do you know the words to Auld Lang Syne now?
No, I still don't know the words. And I don't think Jimmy Stewart knew the words either.
Really?
No, I don't think so. At the end of the movie, we're singing Auld Lang Syne, and I don't know the words, but I'm acting like I do, and it's really stupid. I'm flubbing up the words. It's awful. And at the end, I kind of laughed because I knew I embarrassed myself. And Capper didn't change it. He didn't teach me the words, so I didn't know. I was just acting out. And Stewart stopped singing and looked at me and started laughing. He didn't know words either. I'm quite sure.
And they used that shot in the film, which
Yeah,
I thought
they
was
did,
very
yeah.
interesting,
That's
that
the
he
one
was
you
laughing
should.
because of...
You don't just shoot a scene once, you do it over and over and over again. And he picked that one.
Yeah, you know, in that cookbook, I really liked some of the other items, like Uncle Billy's pet hush puppies. And my favorite was Potter the crab cakes. That was perfect. But I want to give Darby a chance to talk as well.
Well, I have one just to up it on that song. We all got together. Fess, fortunately, went and saved all the old Boones and brought them out, had them remastered, and brought out the DVD, and invited us up to the Vineyard for the release of them. Of course, nothing ever disappears. Somewhere online, they have where Fess, Ed Ames, and I got up. Now, Fess is a singer. He sang part of the theme song in the beginning. Ed Ames, of course, has the most gorgeous voice of... When he sang Amazing Grace at Fess's interment in Santa Barbara, I mean, oh. And they asked me to get up and sing with them, okay? I'm not a singer. We all get up there. They're forgetting the lines to Daniel Boone. Fess finally looked at him, shook his head, just walked away. And I'm like, no, come on, we can do this.
Well, you know, I find it not too amazing that you're involved with Westerns, because your father was a Western star.
Yeah.
At Hinton, right?
Yeah. And, well, yes. And, of course, there were a lot more Westerns back then. I love the Cowboys.
Gotcha.
I love the Western way.
Gotcha.
You know, it was very uniquely American. I think they still stand for something. That's why we did this fun little movie that I get to go to the opening to tonight. Because events like this, just a lot of you have come up, oh, you know, we love Daniel Boone because it was a family show. We could watch it with the whole family and the value. So we were silly enough to go out and make a little movie with some of that, and we'll see how it does.
And your father, unfortunately, died when you were very young. You were only 14 months old.
14 months, yeah.
And, you know, I don't think you understood it then when it happened, I would imagine. 14 months,
No, my two older sisters, especially my older, we're all 3 years apart. So my oldest one, she really was the whole, because we were all on Catalina Island, little island off of Los Angeles, vacationing. And 20th Century Fox called him up, oh, we got a part for you, gotta go. So he chartered a seaplane to fly back for it. And when he landed, you're right, for years I could not understand, and you didn't want to ask Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
How does a seaplane crash between, you know, an island and the LA coast? Yeah. But what happened was, because my brother-in-law, who loves history and went and researched papers and stuff, when the plane took off, he asked the pilot to circle the harbor so he could wave goodbye to us, because we were all standing on the pier. I was, you know, baby in arm with my sister and stuff. And when they came around, they have what they call a Californietta, which is all that wind that comes across the Pacific, hits the top of the mountain, and comes just like a big wave. Yeah. And the plane got right in that, and it just pushed the plane right into the mountain.
Right in front of your family.
Yeah, yeah. They had to tackle my mom. She tried running down the pier and swim across to them.
How horrible. But
on a lighter note,
but your first movie, according to IMDb, which is often wrong, so that's why I wanted to ask you that, is Heroes Island in 1962.
Yes.
You were about four years old, I guess.
About 4 when
There, right?
yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it's funny, I was just last night talking, because I brought a picture of that, because one of these I found the lobby card for it, and it was great. But I remember doing that one, because I was supposed to be hiding from the pirates, and they're like, well, you gotta get in the hole, we're gonna throw a canvas, and we're gonna start throwing dirt over you. It was just a couple days ago, I realized, maybe that's why I had a fear of being buried alive when I was growing up. Because through my teens, I really had this thing of like, oh my God, I could be buried alive. You know, what if they didn't know I was really dead? You know? But it just, the two of them just kind of clicked. I remember that scene.
And then Son of Flubber, which, you know, with Fred McMurray and Charles, what's his name?
You know,
Tommy Kirk.
Okay, so here's the stage bomb. This is the definition of stage bomb. Where I'm at Disney, I was walking, so however old I was. And Walt Disney walked into the commissary. And my mom's, oh, there's Walt. Go say hi to Walt. Go tell Walt you want to be in this movie. Go, you know. I'm like, what? I don't. Go. So, hi, Mr. Disney. I really want to be in one of your pictures. They looked at him and goes, well, I don't know, kid. You're pretty small. I don't know if you can carry the dialogue. That upset me. I am strong. I can carry anything. He sent me right to wardrobe. He said, go, you're in the movie.
Now with Karolyn, everybody talks about It's a Wonderful Life, but you were also in The Bishop's Wife, which is also a fabulous movie with David Niven and Loretta Young. How did you get that job? Do you remember what you...
I don't remember how I got that job, no. I was older, a year older, but I don't remember the interview at all.
But you claim, at least in the press, that Cary Grant was your favorite actor.
He was my favorite.
Even though Jimmy Stewart was there holding you, ringing the bell, all that stuff.
Well, Jimmy and I remained friends throughout my life.
Gotcha.
I mean, it was a different kind of relationship, but for Cary Grant, he really liked kids.
Really?
And that was really great for me on the set, because there really was an ice skating rink on the stage. And he came and got me every day at lunch, and he would pull me around on a sled while he practiced his ice skating. And I will never forget that. It was just really sweet and kind. There was a little bit of ego problems on that set, because they...
Ego in Hollywood?
Yes.
Shh, don't tell anybody.
And he didn't really have too much to do with the other adult stars. And so because of that, he really paid attention to me, and I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. I also think that the man had a photographic memory, because I never, ever saw him with a script in his hand. Ever. Not ever. Most of the time, you know, you just see him sitting around studying their script, you know, the next scene or whatever. The man never had a script in his hand. Just
How about David Niven or Loretta Young?
David Niven was a no-no. You're
Really?
kind of told up front who you can hang around with and who you're supposed to stay away from.
Really?
Yeah, and David Niven was off limits.
Okay. And what about Loretta Young?
She wasn't real friendly, because she was really into the part. And
That's interesting.
I think the ego problem went all the way around with the three of them. Yeah. Originally, The Bishop's Wife, Cary Grant was supposed to be my
angel,
father.
Yeah, right.
And David Niven was the angel. Well, it wasn't going very well. And so the studio had fired the director and hired Henry Koster, and he was really a different kind of director. He changed the characters around, and David Niven was never happy about that.
Okay.
And so the three of them didn't get along very well.
Really?
And can't quite say that.
Fun set.
So it really wasn't really, but it was great for me, because Cary Grant was just really wonderful, and he'd read me stories and he'd tell me stories. The man never had a script in his hand, I'm telling you. It was really incredible.
Now, you stayed in touch with Jimmy Stewart through the years, with Cary Grant at all, or?
No.
No.
Jimmy Stewart is the only one, because he looked for me. My mother died when I was
14.
Well, yeah. but she had started getting sick when I was 8. And so you needed a guardian to take you for an interview. You needed a guardian on the set if you got the part. It was very complicated for my father to put all this together, and he really didn't care whether I was in the movies or not. And so I didn't do a whole lot because she was out of the picture. And then my father she died when I was 14, and my father got killed when I was 15, so the court in Hollywood sent me to a little town in Missouri. That was the end of my career, and I never went back. So I wasn't really involved in Hollywood, per se. And so It's a Wonderful Life is what brought me back, kind of, because of Jimmy Stewart. People were writing to him, calling him, wanting to know what happened to that little girl. And so he managed to get his secretary to find me in the middle of Kansas, and that's how I got back on board again in 1980. And I also actually sat down and watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life for the first time.
And your mom suffered from Alzheimer's disease.
She did. She had Alzheimer's. It was early onset Alzheimer's. She died when she was 42.
Oh, wow, I never heard anyone that young.
It happened.
Wow.
She had 2 other brothers that had the same thing, but they were later in life, and so that's how we knew the diagnosis, because we saw.
So you were still acting when she was getting ill.
Oh yeah.
And everything.
Yeah. But like I said, my father had to pay for a guardian and all this sort of thing. It was hard.
Gotcha.
Hard.
Gotcha. Because you were in Rio Grande, right, with John Wayne.
Oh yeah.
A few years later.
Yeah, well, she was with me then.
She was.
Yeah.
Any comments about that film, about Rio Grande?
Oh gosh, it was a blast. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, Moab, Utah, all the Sons of the Pioneers. Oh, it was so much fun. But I will tell you this. A little scuttlebutt, I learned curse words for the first time.
Did Mr. Wayne have anything to do with that? Or?
No, it was Maureen O'Hara.
Really? Well, you heard it here.
Her hairdresser even said there's a child present. And that made me listen all the more. Rio Grande.
Rio Grande with John Wayne. She says Maureen O'Hara taught her some tough language.
Yes.
And who was that language directed at?
She had just had a little set-to with Mr. Ford. And it was loud. She could give him what for. She wasn't afraid of him. I think other people were, but she wasn't.
Yeah.
Let him have it.
That's hysterical. Really hysterical. Now, going back to Darby for a second. So now, you were in a lot of television besides Daniel Boone. You were in Mr. Ed, Route 66, Wagon Train, Ozzie and Harriet. But then the opportunity came up with Daniel Boone, and the story you told a second ago with meeting Mr. Disney that led you into that career, I guess.
Oh, no. Well, Disney was Davy Crockett.
Ah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I got something in my throat. Boone was NBC and Fess, who also played Davy Crockett. And when they came out of it, you know, the challenge was, it was so popular. They say his coonskin cap built Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And it was so popular, but if you have Davy Crockett, once he gets to the Alamo, the story's kind of over. So they did 3 of those, and then they did 1 prequel. Let's have the idea to go to the Alamo. And then after that, it was it. And then Fess's manager and Fess were like, we got a guy that's, you know, 6'7", looks great in a coonskin cap. What can we do with him? And that's how they came up with the Daniel Boone show.
Gotcha. And did you audition for that, or?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Well, yes and no. I didn't know I was auditioning for it. I actually thought I was like you say, you never know what you're doing. My mom came into my room. She said, "Come on, they're casting for The Sound of Music," and she had a lederhosen and knee-high socks and got me dressed in that. From the top of Bel Air all the way down to 20th Century Fox, she had me singing Edelweiss and Doe a Deer, and unfortunately, my mom was always late, always. She was even late to her own funeral. And we got, you know, once we got through the gate, there was a 3-story casting building, I'm sure you know it, Fox, on the Fox Pico lot. And she's dropped me off and said, I'll go park the car, go quick, 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 you know, we're late. So I went in there and saw a line of kids and went up to the line, and the secretary kind of looked around the line at me and goes, come here. I'm Darby Hinton. She goes, yeah, just 1 minute. And as soon as the other kid came out, she hustled me in. I'm sure it was just a joke to play on these guys. And it was a room full of, you know, big guys, big desk, everything. And the tallest guy was like, oh, you know, tell us about yourself. And I joked around and got around along with them a lot. And I left, and there's my mom running up and down the halls. Where are you? They've been looking for you. Oh, yeah. I said, well, I don't know, but whatever's in there, I just got it. And they did. They sent me right to wardrobe. And the interesting thing was they didn't have a role for me. They were casting Israel Boone. And there's a guy that got the part, Billy Horton. But they liked me, and I got along with Fess so well. They said, well, let's have a younger brother. And they started me as a younger brother, and then halfway through the pilot, thank you, my dear. Halfway through the pilot, talk about old great directors. We had George Marshall, who was one of the last, still through the bullhorn and yelling at people and I liked him for some reason. I'd sit on his lap while he was yelling at everybody. And he wrote a scene in the movie. The fort was being attacked by Indians, and he had this idea, a flaming arrow come over and hit the powder keg, and I was huddled down with all the other kids under the wagon, but I ran out, pulled out the arrow, stomped on it, you know, and Mom comes over, oh, you know, Nathan! And I'm like, oh, Ma. Well, they saw it the next day, the producers and everything said, we don't need the older guy. Get rid of him, move him up to Israel. And so in the middle of the pilot, if you see the pilot, at the end of it, when Daniel's walking out of the fort, he's got two sons on either hand, you know, on either side. And in the beginning, there's a scene where both of the kids come out of the woods. But they changed it all around. The only thing they had to reshoot was Ma coming up to me and saying, oh, Israel. Wow. And that's how I got that part.
Wow. And you know, the next thing I want to get to is the whole concept of transitions, because you alluded to it a moment ago, that you lost your mother at 14, your dad at 15, and they shipped you away from Hollywood. That must have been very traumatic for you, I would think.
Oh, it was. It was very traumatic.
Even just for any child to lose their parents, it's traumatic. But now you also had sort of like an acting family, I would think. You know, people you knew in that industry and everything, and a purpose, if you will.
Absolutely. It was. I mean, it was a whole different life. We moved to this little town that was a farm town. There were 800 people in the whole town, and to boot, I went to live with my father's brother and his mean wife. So, but in the long run, it was a great thing to happen to me, because everyone in that little town knew what a despicable woman this was. And so they rallied around me in so many different ways. The merchants, my teachers at school, everything. There were 30 kids in my class, and that's very small. And you know, it was a whole different life. But those people made me realize how genuine they really were, and they really cared for me, and they gave me love, which sometimes in Hollywood is a little hard to find. It's a very dog-eat-dog sort of situation in Hollywood, and it's look out who's going to stab you in the back type of thing, you know. And I really didn't want to have to go back to that, so
really?
I never went back.
Did any of your friends and such know of your history? Did you know, teachers, people?
Yes, they all knew, because it was where my parents were from.
Yeah,
and so everybody knew, but they didn't ever mention it ever
really?
After I got there. Not a word. No, it was Karolyn. It wasn't anything else.
But you found a love that you weren't going to find.
Comfort and genuine, caring people.
So it was a good transition overall.
In the end, it was. It was probably the worst year of my life for that first year. Yeah. But after that, I realized there was hope.
That's wonderful.
So,
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
And Darby, when your series ended, you know, I hear a lot when I talk to people who are child stars that they felt abandoned, that, you know, that they had their friends, their people on the set and everything. All of a sudden, everybody's gone.
Yep. The gate gets locked. The gate that for 6 years you drove up to and just waved at them, and they, you know, Lord, you
How did
went
the
through.
transition affect you? How did,
Well, it was interesting. The first taste I got of it, like you say, when at Fox, if I wasn't on the set or, you know, in that particular episode, we would have a schoolhouse where all the kids at Fox were. And Billy Mooney and Angela Cartwright, you know, from Lost in Space were some of the regulars there that, you know, I knew really well. And Billy's show was canceled a year before the Boone show was. And he had to go back to regular school. Well, a few months later, he comes back in, and I was there when he was begging the teacher, Frances Clamp, the head teacher, please, can I just, I only have a few more months and I'll graduate. Can't I just finish out here? Isn't there any way? And she's like, I'm sorry, you can't. You have to be under contract. And on the way out, I grabbed him. I'm like, Billy, what are you talking about? This is what we wanted to do, you know, when they're driving us to locations and we see kids on the playground and playing sports and interacting with other kids. And what are you talking about? He goes, oh no, Darby, you don't understand. When you get out there, it's like you're the fastest gun in the West. Everybody wants to shoot you down. Oh, come on. Well, show goes off. I go to junior high school. My nose was broken 3 times in the first month of school.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I got so beat up. Because I didn't have a dad, older brothers. I didn't know how to fight back, stand up for myself. I was growing up on a set. I did what people told me. I associated with all the teachers. They loved me. But the other kids. And then once, of course, you know, this is back before anybody had the word bullying and stuff. You know, once they knew you weren't going to fight back, then everybody thought they had a free shot at you. So it was a little rougher.
Did you learn?
Well, like you said, then the good thing of it was, absolutely, first thing I learned was that the stuntman had taught me how to fight, but it was always pulling the punch. So if I took one more step in.
so the stuntman told you how to fight that?
Oh, sure, you know, on the set. And I did, and one kid pushed me too hard one day, and I turned around and decked him and went to town on him, and the teacher let it go a little bit longer than it should have, because the teacher knew I was, you know, they all felt sorry for me. And all of a sudden, that kid was this tough, so all these guys left me alone. These ones looked at me a little more and I learned the pecking order. And the other thing it did, it had me thinking, you know that set I used to like to go visit when I was on the lot, Green Hornet, with that Bruce Lee guy? He sure seemed to know what he was doing. So I went to Hong Kong, I found out who he studied under, and Yip Man, and then William Chung, and martial arts became a very big part of my life.
But I'm glad both transitions worked well. And one of the things I was going to ask Darby about is that, you may not know this, but he is involved in the self-help movement. Jim Rohn.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins and such.
I had a 9-year relationship following Tony around. When I first started with him, I became a master trainer for him. And, well, I've always studied people. That's what you do as actors.
Yes.
You study people and their emotions and what makes them tick. And all these, and there was a very down time in my life that I was going through. My sister actually introduced me to Tony. And we hit it off and became good friends.
But you found that you can recover, which I think is really important, especially coming from a child star background. That, you know, a lot of child stars, there's always a story out there.
Well, everybody. I mean, you know, you can go to Wayne Dyer, who's a great signer. You know, it's not what happens to you; it's what you do with the happenings.
Exactly.
I bet we could both sit here right now and just badmouth the business and badmouth the people in it.
Sure.
Look, the government came in, took all my money because my mom didn't pay taxes. Yes, I gave up childhood and did. If that's what you want to focus on, and if that's what you want to have be your story, then that's how you're going to be. And I know a lot of miserable child actors.
Yes, true.
I look at it like I got to play cowboy and Indians with some of the best cowboys and Indians around. I got to travel around the world. There was one point when I thought I could move away from miserable. You know, at high school, I wanted to finish high school and go to a school where nobody knew me, no pre-notions or anything. So I sent myself up to the Swiss mountains in Switzerland, and 20-hour car ride and buses and trains, and I finally get there and I'm like, this is it. This is my shot at it. And I get out of the taxi, I take my bag, and before my bag hits the pavement, this girl walks by and looks at me and goes, Daniel Boone was a man. And at that point, I gave up. Israel, you know, he's a great character. I had fun doing him, so I have no regrets.
Well, I'm so happy you found happiness and in front of an audience of your fans. I think it's wonderful. We should give them a round of applause for that. Tribute to positive thinking and for positive attitudes. So thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to open it up to the audience if there's any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask them. Yes, sir.
Darby, did Ed Ames ever teach you how to throw a tomahawk?
You know, I was just talking to Ed not long ago, and he told me that someone had just stolen the whip, that he had kept the whip in his garage for all these years. And I said, yeah, but if you had that tomahawk, we could both retire.
Lady back there.
I have a question. What type of careers did you have during your adult life? Because you said that, you know, you were only acting as a child.
Oh, I became a medical technologist, and that was my career. I was in that business for 20-some years, and then I had 7 kids, and I needed to watch them as teenagers much more than when they were preschoolers. So I retired when I was 40. And so that was kind of, I went through 3 husbands now. I'm on my 3rd, so there you go.
And still counting.
I was the Black Widow. They died. But yeah, it was a very interesting life that way. But you know, you pick up and you go. You find the good in life and you go for it.
Darby's still acting, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Full-time.
Yeah, have a movie opening tonight in
You must
Baltimore.
say the name of the thing.
Bill Tillman and the Outlaws, which is a really fun one. Like I said, family friendly. I brought my friends in it. Johnny Crawford. We just had a big West Coast premiere of it, and benefit for Johnny, because unfortunately Alzheimer's has hit him really bad now.
It's very awesome.
And he's living in assisted living. But yeah, that's it. Also, I have, if you like the Hallmark Channel, this October, I understand the one that's not me. The one I did is opening up their Christmas season. It's called Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses. How much more Hallmark can you get than that, right?
This lady here in the front.
Yes, I have one for both of you, for Darby. What was your favorite Daniel Boone episode and why? For Karolyn. A few years back, they reunited all the kids from It's a Wonderful Life. So what was that experience like? It was for Washington. Washington Post, they reunited all the Wonderful Life kids. What was that like?
Well, I guess you're talking about 1993.
Right, when they reunited all the kids.
Or 1996.
Right,
It was kind of
when they
93.
reunited all
We were all, the Target company brought us all together. And, well, we really had been together. That was just publicity. Shall I be truthful?
Go ahead, why not?
The only one that we never had any interaction with was Petey, the oldest boy, Larry Sims. And he was really a star. He was a baby dumpling in the Dagwood movies. So he, you know, he was, but he kind of went off the beam. And he became a technical guru, and that was his life. And he worked when he wanted to, and he was very eccentric, very odd fellow. But we had never met him. But Carol and Jimmy and I were very close, and still are. And yeah, we had a wonderful time with the Target Company. We toured all over and met people and learned about ourselves too. And since then, now that every year we go to Seneca Falls, New York, and to the It's a Wonderful Life Festival. And so we do tour there too. So we have a good time together. We're like real brothers and sisters. It's true.
Me? Oh, well, not to do a shameless plug for my book, but, well, it's a question I get asked a lot, and that's what I did in the book. I took the top, 10, 12 questions that everybody asked me, and where I could give it a little more time, because over 6 years, when you say, what's the favorite episode, there were so many different ones, and for different reasons. I mean, did I get to play with a big cannon and shoot that off? Did I have Robin Matson give me a kiss? Or obviously the one where I got to help Fess and, bring Daniel home, the ordeal of Israel Boone. That was a fun one to shoot. So, like I said, Fess and the people on the set and the people behind the camera, I was fortunate enough, our head of props was also an Eagle Scout. Because there is the desire, I want to go out and be a Boy Scout and do things that other kids got to do, but I just couldn't do it, I was working. But he would, between sets and stuff, show me Boy Scout things and knots, so it was really nice. And once again, I will give credit to Fess, because that's how he ran the set. There were no egos, you did your job, and Ron Ely said it at Fess's interment, because he gave a eulogy right before I did. And he said he came on the Daniel Boone set, and he couldn't believe it was a working set, because nobody was yelling at anybody, and there wasn't the panic going on. So.
Thank you very much.
You alluded to finances. When you were 15, went to Kansas, did you have any of the money you had earned, Karolyn, or had it all gone away?
It had gone away. There were no trusts back then, and my parents lived on the money. And of course, this was before all the residual situations, and so, we don't get a dime off It's a Wonderful Life, none of us. And so though it was, I was there, and I didn't have any money, so I was really dependent on these people. And I've been taken care of all my life, so I really didn't know about money. I didn't know how to write a check. I didn't know anything about money. And that was one of the things that I really didn't care to learn about. I did eventually, and it worked out okay.
How did you handle fan mail? Did you answer it yourself or have a secretary do it, or didn't you answer it at all?
You're the one that had the massive fan mail.
It's funny, Facebook now, which I like and I use a lot. Kids want me to go to Instagram. Anyway, the reason I don't use Messenger is I started when it first came out, and I turned on Messenger and I started to do it, and my whole body just started, and I had the panic attack again. Because you're a kid and they come in with a bag of mail and dump it in front of you, and you read the letters, and they're all very heartfelt, and they're kids in the hospital and they're dying, and all they want is and you can't answer all of it, especially as a kid who has to go to school, learn his lines, be on the set, and that whole guilt trip, and I didn't realize how much of that I was still holding on to until the whole Facebook and Messenger thing came up. And that's why, if you look, it still says, I will never use Messenger. I can't go do that. I'll answer you on the wall, but, so it is hard with the mail. And then you get people that really don't like you because you didn't answer their fan mail. How could you do that? I'm just getting out of prison, and I thought you'd be best friends.
Is the gentleman back there?
What role did you have in Games of Our Lives? I understand you were so confident.
What role did I have?
Games of Our Lives.
You want me to stand up here and admit I was a Salem rapist to everybody here? Some people, sit back down, would you? Bring that up.
I think we have time for one more question.
No, I wasn't.
One more question from the audience, then we have to end the program. That gentleman over there.
Karolyn, when you first saw It's a Wonderful Life for the first time, what did you think of the movie?
Oh, I was crying too hard. I was sobbing. realized there was magic in that film and that it touched every human being's life. And there was a lot of great messages that could be applied in our lives today. And it overwhelmed me. It really did.
And how interesting that when it first came out, everybody was like, eh.
Yeah, it was successful.
It was not a success. It
No.
lost money right at the get-go. And Frank Capra lost his studio, Liberty Films, who made that film. By the way, Liberty Films made the movie. The logo for the movie was the Liberty Bell, and I'm born on the 4th of July.
That's right.
So that's kind of cool. But no, it was, I don't know why it wasn't a success when it came out. I think that people were not ready for it. It was right after World War II. They wanted to be entertained. They wanted to laugh. This is a dark movie, and it's about a man who's going to commit suicide. Nobody wants to watch that in that particular time. And the movie that won the award that year was The Best Years of Our Lives, which was about soldiers adjusting to civilian life again. And I think that it was marketed incorrectly. It was marketed as a romantic comedy. And it really wasn't a romantic comedy. And then Capra also was told at the last minute that he had to edit this film. There's some terrible editing in that movie, and because he rushed it through to get it ready for the Christmas movie. And it was never meant to be a Christmas movie. It was supposed to be released in March of 1947. But instead, it was released on December the 20th at the Globe Theater in New York. And it was the Christmas movie for that year. That's too late. December the 20th? Too late.
Exactly.
So there's so many reasons why the movie was not a success when it came out. And
Sure has
But it
lasted.
sure-
Sure has legs. Yep, yep.
Well, I want to thank our guests, Darby and Karolyn, and thank you all for coming.